A caravan stretches across the Sahara Desert like a golden snake. Hundreds of camels, thousands of men, and enough gold to break an economy. The year is 1324, and the richest man who ever lived is about to change history. His name is Mansa Musa. When he reaches Cairo, he gives away so much gold that he crashes the value of money itself for years. This wasn't some lucky king who stumbled into wealth. This was the ruler of an empire so powerful, so organized, and so advanced that it made medieval Europe look primitive. An empire that controlled more gold than anyone on earth. An empire that built universities when most of the world couldn't read. The Mali Empire. And its story has been almost completely erased from history. We need to go back to where it all began. West Africa, 1235. The region is in chaos. A powerful tyrant named Sumanguru Kante rules the land with an iron fist. He has conquered kingdom after kingdom, and the epic of Sundiata tells us that his cruelty is legendary. People whisper that he's dangerous, unstoppable, and that he possesses powers beyond those of normal men. But there's one bloodline he fears, the Keita family. So Sumanguru does what tyrants do. He hunts them down. According to the epic, he kills 11 brothers from this family, leaving only one alive, a boy named Sundiata. And Sumanguru leaves him alive for the cruelest reason imaginable. The boy can't walk. He's disabled. What threat could he possibly be? Sundiata grows up in exile, mocked and forgotten, but his mother tells him stories. Stories of his ancestors, stories of greatness, and somehow, against all odds, the boy starts to walk. Not just walk, but grow strong, powerful. By the time he's a young man, Sundiata has become a warrior whom people whisper about with awe. The exiled kingdoms rally around him. In 1235, at the Battle of Kirina, Sundiata faced Sumanguru, the tyrant versus the boy who refused to stay down. And Sundiata wins. Not just the battle, but the war. He unites the fractured kingdoms into something new, something that will become the Mali Empire. But Sundiata doesn't just conquer, he does something revolutionary for his time. He creates a constitution, the Kurukan Fuga. It establishes rights for people. It protects the environment. It bans slavery for certain groups. It created a system where different ethnic groups and religions can live together peacefully. In 1235, while Europe was still deep in feudalism, Mali was experimenting with constitutional law. The empire expanded rapidly under Sundiata's rule. He organized trade routes. He established farming systems. He created an army that can protect the massive territory. And he discovers something that will make Mali more powerful than he ever imagined. Gold. Massive amounts of gold in the southern regions of his empire. But gold is only valuable if you can trade it. And Mali sits in the perfect location. Just south of the Sahara Desert, right on the edge where the desert meets the fertile lands. To the north are Arab traders who control the Mediterranean. To the south are the gold mines. Mali becomes the middleman in the most profitable trade route in the world. They trade gold for salt. And before you think salt sounds boring, understand this. In medieval times, salt was as valuable as gold. You need it to preserve food. You need it to survive. The Sahara has massive salt mines in the north. Mali has gold in the south. Trade makes everyone rich. Sundiata dies around 1255, but he's built something that will last. His descendants ruled for generations. The empire continues expanding, accumulating wealth and power. And then, in 1312, a new king took the throne. His name is Mansa Musa. This is where things get absolutely wild. Mansa Musa is Muslim, and Islamic law says that if you're able, you should make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in your life. So in 1324, Musa decides to make the journey. But he doesn't just travel. He creates a spectacle that the world has never seen before or since. The caravan is massive. Medieval sources describe hundreds of camels, each loaded with gold. Thousands of people are traveling together. His senior wife commands her own company of 500 servants. The procession stretches across the horizon. The numbers from Arab chroniclers might include some exaggeration. Writers of that era loved to emphasize grandeur. But even accounting for embellishment, this journey was unlike anything the world had seen. Everywhere Mansa Musa stops, he transforms lives. He builds mosques in cities along the route. He pays scholars for their wisdom. He helps the poor. He rewards anyone who shows him hospitality. When he reaches Cairo, the Sultan of Egypt himself comes out to greet this African king. And what happens next changes economics itself. Mansa Musa floods Cairo's markets with gold. Not gradually, not carefully. He simply gives it away in such vast quantities that the value drops. Prices shift across the city. The entire monetary system tilts off balance. It takes years for the economy to stabilize. One man, one journey. He accidentally reshapes a nation's wealth just by being generous. Historians studying this period believe Mansa Musa controlled an enormous portion of the world's gold supply. The exact amount? Impossible to know for certain. But every account agrees on one thing. He was wealthy beyond anything his contemporaries could imagine. Yet the gold isn't the real story. On his way back from Mecca, Mansa Musa brings something that will outlast any treasure. He brings scholars, architects, teachers, books. He brings an architect named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who revolutionizes building in West Africa. Together, they construct mosques that still stand today. The Jingareba Mosque in Timbuktu, the Royal Palace. These aren't simple structures. They're architectural marvels made from mud brick that have survived for 700 years in one of the harshest climates on Earth. And Timbuktu. Today, people use this name to mean a place that's far away and irrelevant. The middle of nowhere. But in the 1300s and 1400s, Timbuktu was one of the most important cities in the world. Mansa Musa transforms Timbuktu into an intellectual capital. He established the University of Sankore. Scholars come from across Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe to study there. The university grows to hold thousands of students. They study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, geography, history, and theology. The city's libraries hold hundreds of thousands of books, ancient manuscripts on every subject you can imagine. While European books are rare and precious, Timbuktu has so many that they're bought and sold in regular markets. One chronicler from the time writes that the book trade in Timbuktu is more profitable than any other business. Students debate philosophy in the streets, scientists map the stars, legal scholars write detailed treatises on justice and governance. Timbuktu becomes a city where knowledge matters more than birth or wealth. If you're smart and willing to learn, you can study alongside the greatest minds of the age. But the Mali Empire isn't just about one city or one king. The system Sundiata built keeps working. The empire controls the gold trade so completely that European kingdoms depend on it. When medieval Europe wants gold for their coins, for its churches, for their crowns, that gold comes from Mali. The Portuguese eventually sailed around Africa trying to find the source and cut out the middleman. The empire's organization is impressive. Mali is divided into provinces, each with a governor. These governors collect taxes, maintain order, and send reports to the capital. The army is professional and well-trained. The roads are safe. Ibn Battuta, a famous traveler from Morocco, visited Mali in 1352 and wrote that it was the safest place he had ever been. A woman can travel alone from one end of the empire to the other without fear. The legal system is complex and fair for its time. Courts settle disputes. Judges are educated and expected to know the law. punishments exist for crimes, but they're proportional. The empire has a postal system for communication. Market towns are connected by trade routes that are maintained and protected. Mali's influence spreads through trade and culture. Their merchants travel across the Sahara, down to coastal regions, and east toward Egypt. They bring goods, but also ideas, music, stories, fashion, religious practices. The Mali Empire becomes a cultural powerhouse that shapes West Africa for centuries. And then something shifts, something that shows both the empire's power and hints at what's coming next. After Mansa Musa died in 1337, his son took over. Then his grandson. The empire stays strong for another century. But there's a problem that even all the wealth in the world can't fix. The empire is huge, too huge, stretching across vast territories of West Africa, from near the Atlantic coast deep into the interior. Holding this together requires constant attention, strong leaders, good communication, loyal governors, and as the decades pass, these things start to slip. In the 1400s, new powers rose. The Songhai people, who live in the eastern part of the empire, start to flex their muscles. They've been part of Mali for generations, but they're developing their own ambitions. Meanwhile, in the north, the Tuareg people see opportunity. They're desert warriors, and they start raiding Mali's northern cities. In 1468, Timbuktu fell to Songhai, the great intellectual capital that Mansa Musa built. The Songhai don't destroy it. They're smart. They take it over and make it their own. Under Songhai rule, Timbuktu continues to thrive as a center of learning, but it's no longer Mali's. The Mali Empire doesn't collapse all at once. It's more like a slow fade. Piece by piece, territories break away. Some become independent kingdoms. Some were conquered by the Songhai Empire. Some fall to the mossy kingdoms in the south. The gold trade routes shift. New powers control the salt mines. By 1500, the Mali Empire was a shadow of what it had been. It still exists, but it's been reduced to a small kingdom around its original heartland. The days of controlling vast amounts of the world's gold are over. The universities still function, but the empire's glory days have passed. And this is where history does something cruel, something that will lead to Mali being almost completely forgotten. In the late 1400s, Europeans started sailing down the African coast. The Portuguese built forts on the western coast of Africa. They're looking for gold, for trade routes, for slaves. When they arrive, they find wealthy kingdoms and advanced civilizations. But they don't want to acknowledge this. It doesn't fit their narrative. European writers and historians start describing Africa as a dark continent without history or civilization. They ignore the universities, the legal systems, the art, the architecture, and the trade networks. They pretend that African empires like Mali never existed at the level they actually did. The manuscripts from Timbuktu's libraries, many have been destroyed over the centuries, some by weather and neglect, some by religious extremists centuries later, who see them as heretical. Some are stolen by European collectors who take them back to museums in Paris and London, where they sit, uncatalogued and unstudied, for hundreds of years. The oral histories that preserved Mali's stories. Colonialism disrupts these traditions. Languages die out. Griots, the traditional storytellers who memorized and passed down history, lose their cultural importance as European education systems take over. By the 1800s and 1900s, when most popular history books about world civilizations were being written, Mali was barely mentioned. If it appears at all, it's a footnote. Some African kingdoms existed, but they weren't very important. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage might get a paragraph. Sundiata might not appear at all. Millions of people learn world history in schools around the globe and never hear about the Mali Empire. They learn about medieval Europe, about Asian dynasties, about Middle Eastern caliphates, but not about an African empire that was richer, more organized, and more advanced than most of medieval Europe. This erasure isn't accidental. It serves a purpose. If Africa had no great civilizations, no history of achievement, then colonialism could be justified as bringing civilization to an uncivilized continent. If Africans built no great empires, wrote no books, established no universities, then treating them as inferior makes sense in the colonizer's mind. But the truth never fully disappears. It hides, waiting to be rediscovered. In the late 1900s and early 2000s, something important happened. Scholars, many of them African, start piecing Mali's history back together. They find the manuscripts that survived in Timbuktu. Families have been hiding them for generations, keeping them safe from extremists and thieves. These manuscripts prove everything: the universities, the legal debates, scientific knowledge, the poetry, the business contracts. Archaeologists start excavating sites in Mali and the surrounding countries. They find the remains of cities, trade networks, and technologies that confirm the written accounts. DNA studies and linguistic research trace the connections between different West African peoples, showing how the Mali Empire's influence spread and shaped the region for centuries after its decline. Modern historians start re-examining the accounts from Arab travelers, like Ibn Battuta, who visited Mali. They cross-reference these with the oral traditions that survived, with the manuscripts, and with the archaeological evidence, and a picture emerges of an empire that was every bit as remarkable as anything in medieval Europe or Asia. Today we know that the Mali Empire, at its height, had a population somewhere between 10 and 20 million people, possibly reaching 25 million. That's a massive population for the medieval period. It controlled a vast area of West Africa. Its trade networks connected it to the Mediterranean, to the Middle East, and to other African regions. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future content. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating videos like this. And hey, if you're interested in learning more about Battle of Hattin, the battle between Saladin versus Crusades, check out my next video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.